All right, good morning, people. It's Bob. He's back. It's Monday. Let's get right down to it. Break down some Bitcoin here. Weekly chart in front of us here. Figured might as well start with the one we normally do. Right up here against the resistance of the 21 simple. Right now, it is just below it. Kind of looking things over. I still think we get some feasibility that we go ahead and move back to the upper portion of this bear flag rising channel situation here, which again gets us to about 21.2, 21.3, somewhere in this range, and we'll kind of take a look at some lower term time frames, and you'll see how it could kind of play out that way. And then potentially you come up here, and then you do in fact start to make your way down through the pattern. And we talked about the RSI last week. I mean, we've kind of got this ascending triangle type of look where we added this right here as a kind of a horizontal trend line. We broke through that. We'd already broken through the big downtrend. We haven't really massively back tested it, I don't feel like. We got this one initially that came out here and tapped and went, but a lot of times, again, you get a double tap back test of something. So this was the first one. You come up here, you fall through, and then we'll get a go again. And again, it may not have to play out that way. The other concept would be that this thing is in fact an ascending triangle, and then instead of coming up here and getting smoked by this trend line here, the expectation would be more so that you actually kind of the RSI would move all the way to an area up above and beyond that, and then here you are. So if it is in fact more of an ascending triangle concept, then we get a retest here and go, which I think that's feasible too. Especially kind of looking in on the daily chart and some thoughts I had there. And don't get me wrong, daily chart, I think it could go one of two ways as usual. But I was looking at the daily chart. I just said, I think this would make sense. But obviously, if we get a weekly that this was an ascending triangle, this thing is going to pop all the way up into here. Well, all of a sudden we're back in neutral territory, and then all we got to do is look for a retest here and go. So it just depends. I think if this is a rising channel, we're pretty close to the maximum move before we start to make our way back down and potentially come down into here again. If we're ascending triangle, again, the concept would be that we still got some distance to go before we need to retest. So you come up here, then retest the strength and the support of the kind of bull bear crossover zone there. So we'll see what ends up happening. But really, the biggest thing is we still got to make a run at this high at some point. Whether that happens this week, we come up, break up out of this channel, back test it within this week, and then we stay through here throughout maybe the rest of the week. A lot of different things that could happen there. I did want to at least just take a brief look at the monthly. You can see here monthly chart. And I've talked about this before. I don't think it's been mentioned very much, but there was a point during this month where we were actually in bearish control territory for the first time in the history of Bitcoin on the monthly channel or on the monthly chart. And even now, it's not amazing, right? Like this is still the lowest it's been in the history of it. At least going back to this point, if we wanted to actually take a look at the full history, we could go ahead and pull up our Brave New Liquidity, Brave New Coin Liquid Index for Bitcoin here, and you'll see the same thing. I mean, it's been down this low before, but at least by the close of a month, it had never broken down below it. Well, same thing here. Bitcoin on the monthly is in fact breaking out of this falling wedge as well. So, I've been saying, I think that there's some feasibility. We get a fourth quarter that has some intrigue to it. And, what better way to do it than you break out of a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend and get some serious rise out of this. And again, who knows, maybe just make our way back to this guy here, which, if we do that, then we're still only talking 30,000, but that's 50% increase from where we're at right now. And you got to imagine if Bitcoin is increasing by 50%, what's the rest of the market looking like? Are we 3xing, 4xing across the market? Certainly got to be a thought as far as that part goes. But, obviously I'm not going to focus too much on the monthly chart just because it produces so few signals that you can't necessarily read too much into it one way or the other. But because I made it, if I made the argument against this chart here, saying, well, normally you want to see 3 taps to the downside of a pattern. Well, really we only got 1, 2 here. I could argue that maybe if we talk about the 3 drives down, here was 1, here was 2, here was 3. So we've got our 3rd drive down. One of them just happened to take place a little further up the chart. Okay, we could maybe make that argument, but the only way that this plays out any differently, let's say that this truly is just an outright bottoming pattern, and I could show you some other examples where you get this kind of like almost like a rounding to the top of it, which this could kind of have, but you kind of bounce up out of there. And then this side just recovers basically the entirety of this portion right here. So in 1 month we could legitimately, and again I don't know how things play out here, but in 1 month you could legitimately watch this candle get wiped out. And I would say it probably happens whenever Bitcoin recovers 24K and then flips that to support. Whenever that takes place, this is going to get wiped out probably that same month. And again, that gets us right up there to that 40, or not 40, but, low 30K range. And then the question just becomes, all right, well, if we can get that high, can we get back to here and put in what I would expect would be a bearish retest of the monthly 21 simple, which is all the way up there at 40K. Unless it happens in the next few weeks, it's, this is going to be probably down here or here by the time the price action will get to it. So again, the logic would dictate that even if we have an amazing quarter, you're probably capping the upside definitively at probably 40K, almost assuredly, at least what I would say for now. And then really I think best case scenario in the midterm, if you will, the intermediate kind of term, would be into this $30,000 range. Does it happen this month? Again, I'm not sitting here speculating that will happen this month, but I mean it could. We've got a solid October here. It's green. That's what we wanted. It potentially comes back down and retests here right at 20K, and then goes from there. Feasible for sure. Feasible. But either way, here we are weekly. Here we are daily. Now the daily, it's tough to say for sure what we're going to get on the daily here. I've got this kind of smaller uptrend right here. Depending on the time frame, I can maybe say that we've got a small uptrend that comes off of there. We've got this uptrend line right here. We've got this uptrend line right here. So now the question is, which ones are going to hold up? And do we even need to come back down here now that we've spent so much time down in here, and then we broke out, we're back testing? Do we even need to come back down here? I think if we do, it's not necessarily a terrible thing. It gets us back to the bottom trend line, right? But that puts us down in about the 19.6-ish range. Whereas realistically, I think at this point that 20K level, and I think to a huge extent, just talking about that monthly chart already, I think the way that this 20K level got bought up, you could almost maybe try to make the argument that already this market is smelling the blood in the water, right? Like that it says, all right, yeah, if we look at that monthly chart, where did we need to bounce at? Where did I just say that it would need to bounce and that it should find support potentially? Right at 20K. Well, we potentially already got that out of the way during this month. Maybe we don't need to test that now. Maybe now it is in fact just 20,300 and go. And who knows? Maybe we don't even have to test down there at this point because, really you broke here, and as long as this thing doesn't have to come too far back down, and again, I think assuming that the general uptrend would continue and that we don't have to actually make our way back down to back test here, assuming this played out and it just kind of shot up from here, again, you're going to be looking for 22.5 at some point this month, maybe something up into, even the 23K range in the following month coming up, right? So there are a couple different scenarios there. I think all of them have some positivity to them. It just whether or not there's some negative that comes along with it before we get to that positive. And again, this is the tough part right here, is that you're starting to see this chop here, which means that the trend itself may be coming to an end. The only way that it doesn't is in the event that this candle pops up out of here hard today, really. I mean, it has to, because right now we've already tested the top of the candle. It's getting rejected, and now it's just a matter of whether or not it's going to decide to hold on to this 20,700 level, or if maybe we do want to come down just maybe give this one more try here, or even down into here one more time. But the interesting thing on the RSI and the daily is that it, at least as of now, this particular uptrend right here is essentially being held, and kind of almost got a bit of a bull pennant forming there, potentially at least. So, if this in fact is something of a bull pennant, and maybe the market, maybe it should be like right there. If that's a bull pennant, this thing's gonna come up out of here. All of a sudden, you're going to be looking at a potential move from the RSI standpoint that'll get you all the way back up here. That knocks out this high. So, unless it put in a lower high and still put in a higher RSI, we got, we got some potential positivity to it. I mean, I would say that would correspond to a move up into this range and at least attack this high again. So, again, some things that would be interesting here, but I think as of right now, you got to assume that 19.7-ish is not unexpected at this point, perhaps, would be what I'd say. That it wouldn't be out of the realm of reasonability to come back and touch that number. 20,000, 20,300. And then, we know, again, just reiterating what typically happens out of a falling wedge, breakout. You make your move, and then you actually back test at a slightly lower level than the breakout. So maybe we do still come back down 19.2. Maybe we do come back down 18.7, maybe 18.4. But maybe not. And maybe if it is going to happen, maybe it doesn't happen until after we've already gotten to up here. And then we come back and back test, and it scares everybody right here. They start running from the market again, and right before it goes on a massive, wild upside push. So we shall see there. We shall see. But let's go ahead and we'll zoom in on some shorter term time frames. Was watching this kind of play out yesterday, and I'm like, all right, for no good reason, I feel like this will probably turn around right about here. Just kind of the way this was forming. You got this double top, but at the same time, it's kind of got this, rising wedge kind of look going too, based off of the original trend line here. So that was kind of where I've been thinking, this may give us our push up into this range that I'm talking about, that 21.1, 21.3. Then, assuming that the market's just going to go ahead and stay bullish, you come up here, you're going to fall out of here, come on back. Where are we going to end up back testing? Potentially this trend line actually does hold up. And if it does, then all of a sudden you're looking at something, again, maybe down into here, this 19.8 range, and then another move to the upside that maybe gets us to this 21.5 and above range. Now, again, if this thing, now this is the interesting thing here, is that you compare this to the RSI, you can see the obvious differences. There was some bearish divergence here because this was a lower high on the RSI, but an equivalent high on the price action. But then it came right down here, and you get this double bottom basically, and that was really the main thing I was looking at yesterday. I'm like, man, that may very well double bottom there, and in fact it is and has at this point. So now, again, I look at this and I say, all right, well, we might as well assume that something up to around 21.1 is a reasonable likelihood. But keeping in mind that depends on what happens here. If this is truly a double bottom, if we truly get a double bottom here, this thing should break this trend line. Then the 4-hour chart potentially makes a move all the way up into this range. If that happens, well, then my goodness, I mean, 22.4, 22.5 is, probably a stark possibility, and maybe without even having to come up here, get rejected, and then go again. Do I think that would play out? Probably not, and only because you can see how extended we are here. The 200's way down here. All the other moving averages have already crossed on the 4 hour. So essentially, there's to assume that momentum should carry on, I think would be foolhardy, at least a little bit. So I'm not going to assume that it's going to crack through here, but I am at this point assuming that it should have enough power to get back up to this 21, and if not slightly above it. And I think that would be a great place for us to actually get something of a bullish fake out if we're going to get one. Something that, we come on up here, you break this trend line, you're going to have a bunch of people that once this is broken and actually temporarily held, there are going to be a lot of buyers there. So that's where you probably get a decent pop, maybe even up to this 21.5, and then roll over and come on down. So again, I mean, there are a lot of ways it could play out. I'm just going to point out the things that I see and that again are feasible for what we're seeing here. You break down out of this pattern. Let's say it's right here. Again, we're coming back down 20,300-ish. If we don't even get beyond this high right here, say that 20,829 kind of caps us out right here real soon, well then all of a sudden, then I don't even think this pattern really holds up at all. And maybe you break down from here right at 20K. So again, we got a pretty decent idea what to expect here. Decent idea. And again, this double bottom right here, that was kind of a big deal. This, again, it could end up just looking like a bullish fake out here in the very near future. Maybe come up here, get rejected, and just roll right on over. But for the time being, that's positive. And then on top of it, I mean, again, we've talked about this rounded bottom a million times and where it's truly valid and all that stuff. But, again, I'll be happy to just extrapolate this thing out. And you'll see that it fairly well lines up. Regardless of how I structure it, it still fairly well lines up. All I did was expand the zone a little bit. And let's line up that there. So yeah, I mean, you can see that at that point it's still firmly within here. And if you even do manage to come back down to here, well, that's obviously a good place to try and get a buy in there, right? That's logical. We got multiple trend lines that would suggest that's a logical spot. Or, again, last thing to consider would be that we didn't get our spring action yet, right? That we didn't take out a sufficiently we still haven't come down sufficiently to say that we're really getting a spring. So, again, if we need to come back down and backtest this trend line here, which more or less lines up to that long-term downtrend, the rise or the falling wedge, well, heck, all of a sudden that gets you spring action, and this actually gives us enough space to come down and get right back into it like we've been talking about, and then go just gangbusters out of there from here. So, again, I wish I could sit here and tell you that I had the crystal ball and I know exactly this is how it's going to play out, not this other way, but it's just not the way it goes. So you just look for the levels that you're looking for. Let it tell you what's going to happen. But again, let's zoom in here. Switch up the time frames again. Hourly. We got this 20,667 here. Got that as kind of like an intermediate kind of a support and resistance zone. And again, you'll see here. I mean, it's one of those things where we've messed with that line a little bit here. You got some action there, some action above and below it. So, and then right here, I think is the main reason that I've even got it as any kind of like reasonable support or resistance, was just because of this area right here. So, it could be somewhere in between these two, but, and again, obviously we got fib charts, fib levels and everything we're working with. Well, this one actually, this is the hourly chart that I use. I based it off of the full capitulation from about 28K. Well, right now, this is the first time in a while we've moved up above and held the 236 fib level. So now, again, you start to look at this and say, all right, well, last time we got last time we made a move up this high, we made a move all the way up. Yeah, and I'm not counting this, just to kind of negate that for the moment. You made a move all the way up to here. The move prior to that came to here. And then prior to that, you actually made it all the way. You were here. Now, granted, at the time, this wouldn't have looked exactly like this. But you would have had the move down to here, and then the retracement back to the 702. So now we're just trying to find our way back through these retracement levels. And again, it just how this all plays out just depends. But man, we do have some positive things going here. We talked about this concept the other day: a rounded bottom, slightly offset. Again, the idea that this thing could still come down here, test, and then go. And really, again, anything up to a 702 is a logical thing. Just all starts by holding on to the 236 here. So that's the hourly outlook for you there, and then just kind of zooming in on shorter term time frames. Let's see where that 15-minute goes. So yeah, you're 15-minute. If this thing doesn't roll over pretty quickly, then I'm going to assume we will come up out of this pattern. And you can see it's already trying to break through. Just in the last few minutes, it's popped up a decent amount. But yeah, even from here, and this pattern maybe is not totally valid now, given that it's already preparing to break up out of it. But let's assume that this was an otherwise fairly valid pattern. I'm going to make a move here to about 20,877 shortly. Potentially above that. Again, assuming that this thing actually is working on breaking out of here. Which volume-wise is solid volume. On the 5-minute, you kind of got this rounded bottom, stochastics a buy, MACD's curling back, trying to be a buy in positive territory. 15-minute, maybe a little more to the story than that on the 15-minute. So again, we'll just kind of have to see how this all plays out here very soon. But I think again you can definitely see where there's still some potential for at least a little more minimal upside in the short term, and then again a little more extensive as we go from there. And here's what I was talking about on the kind of trend line wise. I have a trend line that kind of cuts through here. And we can just go ahead and add that while we're here actually on this chart. Basically accounting for these right here. So, and then I've got this trend line way down here, catching all the wicks. So, again, I think as of right now, this has got to be the area that you think of as the bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and change that up here. And let's say that this is the line in the sand here. This is the line we don't want to cross, even coming back down and back testing this breakout here. So at least for the time being, again, I still think it's feasible we come back down a little bit further, but again, ideally this is the line you don't want to cross, because that's the one that's already held up from the standpoint of wicks that came down and tested that trend. So we've got our uptrend. Let's see if we can hold it a little further. Let's see if this thing will just pop up in here, or if in fact we are starting into more of a small downtrend here, even kind of cutting through maybe there. For now, again, that's what we've got. And then we've got the kind of this downward pattern there, a little bit of a flag pattern. Again, none of these have huge measured moves, and that's why you got to figure that we're just, if we are going to keep making our way up a little bit, it's going to be kind of piecemeal at the moment. And there you go. But, measured move there probably gets you up to about here. So, yeah, again, 20,800 and change, 21.1, 21.3. Those are all feasible numbers, assuming that everything plays out accordingly. And again, that's reasonable today, assuming that, of course, again, we don't get continued rejection here, because if that happens, it would be fair to believe that we will come at least back down to here, if not here. So we shall see how it goes. Again, on the daily chart, I think that you gotta at least start to have a little bit of caution up here, and only for the simple fact that you kind of got this back and forth, And this candle here, where did it really close as far as trying to find like a major support? If anything, it closed below resistance here. So again, you just got to be a little more cautious that this thing is going to turn into a red candle, and maybe it pops up here first and then turns into a big red candle. So again, we're going to see how it all goes. I'm very interested to see myself. Looking forward to it, but appreciate your time this morning. As always, we appreciate you, and looking forward to catching up tomorrow.